Millions of vehicles could be vulnerable to being hacked and quite literally taken over thanks to a certain device they all have in common. Also in your hacking news roundup, hackers can open 3 million doors and bad actors are cracking passwords in your browser. But first, electronic logging devices are relatively new but also relatively boring. These things are installed in many trucks to log driving hours, distance driven, and a bunch of other things, all to ensure compliance with laws about how many hours that drivers can work. These electronic logging devices, or ELDs, are quickly replacing older systems that do the same kind of logging, like tachographs which log the same kind of data but to paper, and the slightly more modern digital tachographs that log data to smart cards. For decades, these solutions have been used without much issue. However, ELDs are the next evolution. Everything is done by some iPad mini looking thing. But unsurprisingly, the smartification of the basic needs to log simple data has had some disastrous security consequences that security researchers have written a whole paper about. And the consequences here aren't just limited to some bad guy stealing a driver's timesheet. ELDs are connected directly to a vehicle's OBD port, or more common in heavy goods vehicles, their 9-pin diagnostic port. And aside from just diagnostics, access to these interfaces could give a hacker direct real-time control over the vehicle, which would allow them to accelerate, decelerate, deactivate airbags, interfere with steering assist, and a lot more, all in real time. The exact extent of what a hacker could do really depends on the make and model of the vehicle, but regardless, you do not want to give a hacker access to this interface. It's doubly important that these things stay secure because more often than not, truck drivers simply don't have a choice whether to have an ELD in their vehicle, because in the US, they're required by law and other countries are quickly following suit. As per US regulations, there's a whole list of features that ELDs must implement, one of which is wireless and Bluetooth capabilities, so that a roadside safety inspector can easily check whether a driver has gone over their working hours limit. But in this long list of required features, there's no mention of security practices, which has led to some problems. Firstly, the researchers found that the Wi-Fi network names for these devices are often very predictable, so they're trivial to identify. Once a hacker has identified an ELD, gaining access to it is easy thanks to the fact that these things often come with weak default passwords. Once connected, an attacker is able to access a web interface that allows them to upload unsigned firmware, which in a matter of seconds gives them total control over the device and, by extension, the vehicle it's connected to. The researchers demonstrated this. They were able to drive up alongside a truck, upload new firmware, take control of it, and force the vehicle to slow down and stop. Of course, this was all done in a controlled environment, not just to some random truck on the road. But it gets worse. The researchers discussed the realistic potential for a truck-to-truck worm, as in a single hacked ELD could itself be programmed to identify other nearby ELDs and infect them, and so on and so forth, causing a chain reaction that could result in whole fleets of vehicles being taken over. However, there are some limitations to these vulnerabilities. You see, there are hundreds of different models of ELDs on the market, and the researchers only found a small number to be vulnerable and aren't disclosing which ones because the issue still isn't fixed. But in a bit of a twist, the researchers discovered that there are really only a few tens of distinct ELD models actually in use, because a lot of these devices are actually just rebranded versions of each other that under the hood use the same hardware and firmware. Given that ELDs are used in 14 million vehicles in the US alone, you can see how it would only take a few vulnerable models to result in many thousands of exploitable vehicles. And the FBI actually warned of these problems years ago, putting out an advisory in 2020, just months after ELDs became a legal requirement, raising the alarm that whilst the mandate does provide safety and efficiency benefits, it makes no mention of security requirements. However, there's been no news of these things actually being exploited in the wild. At least, not yet. But whilst ELDs aren't actively under attack, something that is your personal data, which today's sponsor can help you do something about. This video is sponsored by Delete Me, the guys who help you take control of your personal data, which is under attack by data brokers. Data brokers are a little known scourge of the internet. They spend their time scraping the web for your personal data, building a profile on you that might contain your name, address, phone number, photos, relatives, there's a long list. Then they sell this profile to other companies, or in many cases just random individuals who are willing to pay a couple dollars for a person search. And there are cases of the data that these guys sell being used to enable enable SIM swapping, doxing, or even stalking, but Delete Me can help protect you from these risks, and it works like this. You provide your data to Delete Me. After all, they need to know what they're looking for, then they'll check hundreds of data brokers for your data, and within just 7 days compile a personalized report on what they found. In my case, Delete Me searched over 1,000 listings, finding 6 data brokers who had 72 pieces of personally identifiable information on me. But the best part is, Delete Me sends removal requests on my behalf, so I don't even have to lift a finger. Taking care of your personal data is essential in today's world, and so Delete Me is giving you guys 20% off their eligible plans with my code SATANIC. More details in the description. If you're watching this video from a hotel room and your door lock just so happens to look like this, or this, then I have some bad news. Security researchers have uncovered critical flaws in a brand of hotel door locks that are used in over 13,000 hotels worldwide, with in total over 3 million vulnerable doors. Now, it might just be the Mandela effect, but I'm pretty sure I've seen these locks all over the place. But these are just the 2 most common affected devices. The problem impacts a whole series of locks made by the company Dormakaba. And as you might have guessed, the exploit simply gives a bad guy the ability to open a vulnerable door, and it works like this. An attacker first needs to obtain a keycard used by the hotel. They could do that just by booking a room for the night, or simply grabbing an expired card from the express checkout box. With a card in hand, it's possible to read the data from it and deduce a certain hotel-specific code. This can be done with a Proxmark 3, Flipper Zero, or any NFC-capable Android phone. Then, with knowledge of that hotel-specific code, an attacker can program 2 new keycards. The first card is used to reprogram a target lock, and the second card spoofs a master key that opens it. And voila, they have access to every room in the hotel. Now, whilst I'd love to give you a more technical explanation on how this works, I just can't, because it's all under wraps for reasons that will become clear shortly. The researchers who discovered the vulnerability explained that they developed this technique at a private event at DEF CON a couple years back. During the caffeine-fueled hackathon, they managed to reverse engineer certain keycard management software as well as the device used by hotels to reprogram door locks. Then, like any responsible hacker, they disclosed the vulnerability to Dormakaba in September of 2022. So why are we only hearing about it now, and why aren't there any technical details? Well, this is a very messy problem to solve. I mean, a fix has been developed, but implementing it is very time-consuming and expensive. All vulnerable locks require a software update, keycards need to be replaced, and card encoders used by hotel staff need to be upgraded. To make matters worse, the line of affected locks has been in use for 36 years. In that time, many hotels have introduced third-party systems like keycard-operated lifts or payment systems, which also need to be updated or maybe even ripped out and replaced. But don't go feeling too bad for affected hotels here, because for a hotel to be vulnerable, they need to be using the affected locks, as well as MeFair Classic keycards, which themselves are famous for having many security vulnerabilities that have been known about for years. As for those vulnerable locks, as of March 2024, only 36% of them have been updated, which means there's still millions of vulnerable locks out there. As such, the researchers aren't spilling any of the technical beans, and they're certainly not releasing any proof of concept code. I mean, the last thing we need is to put this in the hands of Flipper Zero TikTokers. Though, if you happen to be watching this from a hotel room, have a vulnerable lock, and are wondering if you're at risk, one thing you can do is to scan your keycard with one of the many freely available apps to check if it is in fact a MeFair Classic. If so, then there's a good chance you're vulnerable. But I suppose you can take some reassurance from the fact there aren't any reports of this being exploited in the wild, at least not yet. Hackers have turned hundreds of otherwise innocent WordPress sites into command and control servers that force the browsers of unwitting visitors to join in on a distributed password cracking campaign. It works like this. If you merely visit one of these infected WordPress sites, malicious code embedded in a site will serve your browser a victim site's URL, username, and a list of 100 potential passwords. Then, malicious code running in your browser will try to log into that victim site, cycling through the list of potential credentials. This all of course happens totally in the background, so you'd have no idea, well, unless you go poking around in DevTools. The brute forcing is all made possible by abusing a feature in WordPress that enables logging into a site via an API. Many WordPress site owners just aren't aware of the security problems this feature introduces, though it is easy enough to turn off. After your browser has unwittingly done the brute forcing, it'll report the results of its little experiment back to the attacker-controlled server before requesting yet another password cracking task. This cycle keeps on going until you finally navigate away from the infected webpage. This is a pretty clever way of password cracking, because these login requests will all be coming from the browsers of real people, so they're much harder to detect and block compared to if they were all coming from a single VPS. And the hackers here really do have a small army of sites engaged in this. We can use a source code search engine to find out just how many sites are referencing the malicious JavaScript, and as of making this video, there's over 1,600 of them. This campaign was discovered by researchers at Securi, who determined the purpose of this distributed password cracking operation to be to increase the hackers' portfolio of compromised sites so they can be used to push crypto-draining malware, the kind that, upon visiting a site, tempts you with the promise of something silly like a potentially lucrative NFT. All you have to do is connect your crypto wallet, which is of course a bad idea that will only result in your crypto being drained dry. But the question remains, even if you don't fall for the crypto drainers, how can you stop yourself from becoming an unwitting participant in the password cracking side of things? Well, uBlock Origin seems to be the answer. I did a very unscientific test with a few different ad blockers, but in this case, uBlock Origin was the only extension that successfully blocks the hacker's domain. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.